You're listening to the RMPodcast, the official podcast of Red Moon Productions. Here are your hosts, Brandon Davidson, Keith Cheatham, and Sean Sebastian. Enjoy.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Red Moon Podcast, live right here every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube and Facebook. Like, share, subscribe, follow us on all of our social media accounts. I am one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host,
Sean Sebastian.
And, oh, look at that hat. I love that. Little newsboys. He's here to give us the news. Tell us what's going on in the world of Hollywood.
Is that Papaw's hat?
Yeah,
it is.
He's
Nice.
he's starstruck. He can't believe he's here on the show. Look at him. He doesn't know what to do with his hands.
That's the cigars got me all wonky. I'm feeling the buzz.
Oh, you're feeling the buzz?
I'm a little it hit me.
Really?
The cigar hit me good.
Well, wait.
Really?
Well,
Yeah.
you just
That's
came
a light,
in and
that's a light cigar.
It was not a heavy cigar. Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't know why.
can I explain what
Yeah.
what just happened to you, or is that too much info, or do you care?
I don't. What happened to me?
Well, just before the show, an event that took place in my house.
Oh, that giant dump you took?
Yeah, I was trying to beat around the bush to see if you
I
cared.
wasn't-
You don't
I
have
really-
to
I
beat
just-
around the bush
I
about
pooped,
poop.
but
Everybody
yeah.
poops,
Yeah,
Brandon.
that's
Haven't
true,
you
but
read
it was
the book?
it was a massive
just-
dump.
It wasn't though.
I never saw it. I'm just thinking
He
the
just-
way as long as he was
Every-
in there.
Every Keith dump
That-
is a massive
there you
dump.
Oh, I just sit in there and read on my phone. I wasn't pooping the whole time.
That is true. I
He
was
just wanted to get away from
Were
It's
you
like-
reading our articles that we've got?
No, I did that earlier today.
Oh, okay.
My notes won't update, so you know.
Yeah.
They never do until you
there's
open
that.
them. I don't know why.
I kind
It's-
of
it's
was
stupid.
I was kind of just using that time to like get my second win because I don't know why. I just
Well, that's what I was gonna say.
woo,
it's like
I was a
Man,
little.
I had to
I don't
get
know.
the
Maybe
second
it's
wind
just
after that one.
Maybe like I haven't smoked a cigar in a long time. Maybe that was it. I don't
Yeah.
know, but it just kind of got me a little queasy. So I was like, I'm just gonna sit in here and read some articles, and when I'm not feeling
wait till
quite,
it settles.
because you know,
Yeah.
I didn't want to be like, I don't feel like talking right now, guys. So I'll just hide in the bathroom, and then when I feel a little bit,
Well, and
you
that's
know,
the good thing
I
about
wanted to make
having
sure I could talk on the show.
a pre-show poop
Yeah.
is you get through it and you have the time to let it settle, to let it, you don't have it anguish, and you just kind of let it all out. You breathe a little
coffee in me.
bit. Yeah, that coffee will help. Absolutely.
Pick me up.
I'm excited that I'm finally starting to fit
Yeah.
in with
Yeah.
you guys.
There we go. We're all. I mean, it's.
I'm
winter.
almost 40
You
years
gotta-
old, and you guys have way better beards than me.
No, I don't. Mine's only for 2 weeks after it's trimmed from the barber, and then it gets out of hand, and I don't know what to do
Oh,
with
yeah.
it.
You know what to do.
I'm not a real man. I don't know what to do with it.
Jacob said, "Aw, Keith is so cute."
Oh,
Thank you, Burris, for tuning in.
look at that little new. I know
appreciate
that.
it.
Oh, a little kissy for the Burris.
Are you a little kissy Burris?
Is Reagan asleep or is she watching? I want to know.
Is Reagan watching, Jacob?
I want to know.
I want to know.
Also,
what love
Brandon wants to know what your
is.
daughter's doing right now.
I also want to know.
Yeah.
Well, I don't really want to know. I want to shout out to Neil.
Yeah.
And I want to give him a thanks for sending us an article.
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll cover it on the show extensively. We're going to include it in the show notes, but it is pretty cool. It was from Vox. He actually sent it about a week and a half ago.
I saw it.
We just had
and-
such a packed
and
show
yeah,
last week.
I did
Yeah.
see it. I thought it was a great article, and I was glad to see it included in the headlines this week. It is funny that we saw it, but we didn't mention it. So sorry.
Yeah,
Neil.
well, and that's the thing. I wanted to mention it just to at least say it's really cool. It's about color grading and color timing, and how people don't like to use the phrasing color correction, simply because it was always about matching one scene or one shot with another scene
Yeah.
that cohesively brought the film together. So
Yeah.
scenes and film, or
But yeah,
shots that were filmed
definitely
on a different
color
day.
grading now is
Well, I mean, and
Much
it
heavier-handed.
goes through kind of how we have a certain look in films and in TV shows now that kind of have a
Yeah.
muddy or even desaturated look.
dreary
Yeah.
Yeah.
kind of, yeah.
And it breaks
I
that
mean,
down as to why that might be.
it's
and just
better
throws out some
than
theories.
the early 2000s when everything was green, like in Saw, and I would take
Well,
the
the
muddy.
Matrix.
Well, it does.
Yeah.
The article mentions how the Matrix kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
Yep.
created two different worlds by just changing the color grading between
well,
the two.
and that, exactly.
Well,
they,
even
they
the
brought
original
it to,
Matrix didn't do like they went back and retroactively color graded it to match the sequels. But when the first one released theatrically, it didn't have the green color.
Are
color
you
grading.
really?
No, that's
Yeah,
I
no,
was
that-
pretty sure the first Matrix movie.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
has the
no.
green. No, the green tone for
The
the
yellowish
Matrix.
It does
green.
have the green, but in the world, like there's not a green overtone. Like the everything is like on the computer screens, and the downfalling is green. They had the green theme. Yeah, no, I was reading about it. It was interesting because it was
I
just
didn't mention that in the article.
yeah,
it
they
didn't
just
go.
the
It didn't do a
original
deep dive
Matrix-
into that.
Yeah, the original Matrix, they for home release they did the green filter, but the original theatrical version didn't have like when you were in the Matrix, it looked like the real world.
I don't
yeah,
know
I
about
remember
that
that.
because they even bring up the whole Matrix Resurrections and how they kind of overtly went back to
Yeah.
having things more lush and more
Yeah.
because it was like a
Well, yeah,
Matrix
because
2.0 and
every
everything's
every
a little bit
release
more
of it after
perfect.
the original theatrical has the green coloring. While
That's
they're
just
in the
well,
weird.
no,
'cause
no,
I-
but-
in the
but they
theater,
remove
I
it in the
remember there being a
Resurrections.
pretty big difference in just the warmth of the Matrix versus
Yeah.
the cold,
Yeah,
dark.
no, they
Well,
always
because
had
they have the green Matrix overtone when he's in the Matrix, and then in the real world it's more of a
cool.
blue.
It's very cool,
Yeah, cool,
white and
dull
blue,
tone. Yeah. And they bring that up about how it was starting at the time of where they were using color to kind of be a storytelling element, which I thought was very interesting. And they go through a litany of why we may be seeing certain kind of color palettes used more so now as like a one size fits all, because it kind of either brings a certain mood. They're theorizing and they're talking about how it brings a certain kind of mood that they either want to convey, or it's just easier and far better to kind of blend like digital artifacts with something
Right.
that's
Yeah,
real
yeah.
and tangible. So it and they that's where the Lord of the Rings theory comes into play, talking about that was definitely done to blend in CGI, and it's helped it age a lot better. In the current era. But just
It makes me
thank
think
you,
of
Neil.
even like the movie 300.
Oh,
how
yes,
there's
yeah.
kind of a an amber tone to everything, just to give it that kind of like bronze.
Funny enough, I'm actually surprised the article didn't do any kind of Zack Snyder comparisons, because 300,
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
He has a
and
lot.
Sucker
All of his
Punch,
movies.
every single one of it
the
has
Justice
a very,
League movies have
yeah.
that. They're purposefully made to look dark and dim and cool, like very
and honestly,
cold feeling.
I think that was one of the very the first criticisms that came out when the Joss Whedon edit came out, is how when you had that
Oh, you could
compared
see
to
the
the
difference.
Justice
Yeah.
League versus the Snyder cut, you could tell a huge difference in the
yeah.
tone, and that was very intentional on Snyder's part, that Whedon didn't get right at all. I mean, I was at least willing to give him that ball in his court.
Yeah.
But thank you, Neil.
Yeah,
for,
that was
for
good.
sharing that. It was a pretty good article.
Yeah.
Definitely. Again,
I do prefer Lord of the Rings
yes.
original color versus the.
Yeah, the newer.
I did like
Well,
the
and
original
I did.
color
That was
better.
the one thing about the article I was a little bit picky on, because again, kind of like Keith's maybe alluding to here with diving deeper into the Matrix. I know I've watched everything Lord of the Rings special features I can, and I know for a fact that the Blu-rays got knocked because of the bluer tint that they added, or made it cooler. But even when the original films came out, I don't want to say it was sepia toned. That's not the right word for it. Like kind of like what they're talking about in the article about "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" Mm-hmm. But it definitely had more of an ancient type of looking, filter, or not filter, but a LUT that they used in the post, because they did the same thing. They scanned the film
I would
in
say sepia, but it had
digitally.
to have kind of like more a golden.
It was a
kinda
warming
like,
tone.
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah.
And I definitely remember that from the theatrical cuts. It wasn't just for the home release. It might have looked a little bit more
Well, no, I remember
present in the home
Fellowship.
release.
Yeah, that Blu-ray did get bashed for the added
Yes.
blue and green, like how bad it was, like excessive.
But I remember watching the DVDs, and maybe they were talking about specifically just the extended cut versions when they added the extra scenes in there. Because there is one in particular, and now I'm getting nerdy and jumping down a rabbit hole. But there's particularly one scene I know in, I think it's Osgiliath or Minas Tirith, where you see Boromir and Faramir talking with Denethor. And it's like it's obviously not in the theatrical version.
Yeah, it's part of
but
the
it has
extended.
like a lot more bloom to the characters that I didn't think was originally in the theatrical cuts. And I wonder if that was almost kind of part of that artifacting that they're talking about. That was only in like the extended versions that you can definitely tell that they fixed
in the most recent 4K UHD version.
What I was looking up was saying, like, the original Matrix had green overtones, but it wasn't as drastic as the 2 sequels. Like, everything in the sequels was much more green.
Yes.
And they went back for home media releases and made the original more green.
To match the other
the other two, but if you watch it on HBO Max, it actually matches more its original theatrical run.
Really?
Whereas Netflix.
What about Reloaded and Revolutions?
No, they still have, because they were always that green.
Okay, yeah, because I was gonna say I recently just watched those before Resurrections.
No,
those were terribly. I thought
those were
green.
always that green.
Yeah.
The first one wasn't as green as those two, and then they went and made it more green. Like when they were on Netflix, a lot of people complained that like it was super green for all 3 of them, and they kind of went back and scaled that back a little bit for HBO
I mean,
Max.
it's weird, but like the one scene I'm really remembering is in the first movie when they have him in the interrogation room and they're putting the tracer
the bug
in his belly button or whatever. When they lift his shirt up, like his skin is like jaundice, like it's almost yellow, and it's very
sickly looking.
Very sickly, yes, exactly. Yeah. It's kind of just this pale yellowish look, and that's I remember that distinctly from the original film, but obviously it was there intentionally to show you that this is.
They said the part of it was that like back when computers were first big,
you
like,
have the
you had
green
a lot
text
of
on the black screen. Yeah,
well, and they said everything, like even like the computers, like the color wasn't great. Everything was a mixture of like the blue, the red. So like everything had a blue or green hue-ish, like more so than it does now with modern computers, where everything's much more crisp and clear and colorful and. That's part of the reason why the new one isn't green is because it reflects more modern technology.
Yeah. I'm torn between that. Like I understand the filmmakers, they definitely want to add their own thing to it, and they want the film to have a certain feel, so they grade the colors that way. But I've always I don't know if it's just a photography thing, but I always am more interested in the colors looking the way I saw them and not the way someone wants me to see them. And that's so when I would edit photos later after being a little bit more learned with photography, I was going for, instead of trying to get the more saturated, vivid colors, I was trying to get the more realistic colors and not try to make it look darker or dimmer or so. To me, something that's more pleasing is seeing something that looks the way it does to the naked eye and not with a bunch of added contrast or a bunch of blown out colors and things like that. So, but again, to each his own.
Well, I was going to say, I think it depends on the artist.
Right.
Because I would definitely, I understand why a lot of people go for the muted, desaturated tone just to give it more of a feel for what they consider. Like they bring up a good point in the article of how it differentiates what older film look like versus what you're used to seeing with commercials today and how they pop.
Yeah.
But no, it brings about a, you're used to seeing those pops and vivid colors and because they want to catch your attention in advertising. And of course, the first thing a film doesn't want to do is look like a commercial.
Right.
And so they almost use color and mix up the colors and change them up so that it brings your attention back into the thematic elements they're trying to portray.
They should make that movie, the movie that just looks like a commercial.
Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of them out there. They're all like, I don't know, kids shows. And Netflix.
I was going to say, like, one color that looks really good in a film is red, especially when there's a lot of blood. Like in this movie that we're getting ready to review.
Thank goodness. Yeah, I was waiting for a segue because we went on a color topic. Hey, Neil, that article worked out beautifully. That gave us a
nice little open.
A little discussion that we don't normally get into right at the top of the show. So that was awesome. Let's talk about what movie are we reviewing this week? We skipped out on it last week.
Keith reviewed it, so he gets to introduce it.
There you go, Keith.
Well, that would mean every week I review it.
Exactly, and you do it every week.
Oh,
or you're supposed to.
Yeah.
Sometimes Brandon steals your thunder.
I'll steal it right now because
I'm waiting to see.
We're 13 minutes in.
I always mess
he's gonna cut me off. Here's our review of Scream. I knew it. Gosh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
In the late 90s, you may have answered Scream. Released in 1996, the first Scream was unlike anything audiences had seen from the slasher subgenre. It was self-aware, infused with humor while still maintaining suspense and actual scares. The first film would be a success and a franchise would be created. Each subsequent movie would do its best to leave its mark, satirizing the most popular horror movies of their time, along with the ideas of sequels, trilogies, and remakes. Ultimately, though, not every sequel was well received. And after Scream 4 and the death of Wes Craven, creator and director for all of the Scream films, it seemed there was nothing left to say with this franchise. But just as the fourth Matrix recently released was so kind to point out, studios love reviving old franchises in hopes of an easy profit. With Kevin Williamson, who worked with Craven on all 4 previous films as writer and producer, returning to executive produce, Spyglass Media brought on board directors Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillette. Having just done the well-received horror comedy Ready or Not, the duo seemed like a perfect fit to pick up the reins on the Scream franchise. Returning cast include Neve Campbell, David Arquette, and Courtney Cox, playing their iconic roles of Sidney Prescott, Gale Weathers, and Dewey Riley, alongside Mary Shelton returning as Judy Hicks from Scream 4, and a cast of newcomers which include Melissa Barrera as Sam Carpenter, the film's new lead girl, who has a personal connection to the original film. The fifth film, simply titled Scream, tackles the idea of quote-unquote requels, aka reboot sequels, films that wish to reboot the franchise, sometimes with a new cast, while still acting as a sequel to the original, often bringing in legacy characters to pass the torch to newcomers that represent the original cast. Much of the commentary surrounding these ideas are well done. In this way, Scream does live up to the legacy set by its predecessors, offering jabs at modern popular, elevated horror films such as Babadook. The movie also has plenty of Easter eggs pertaining to the original film and the horror franchise in general. You can see the same level of creativity and love of horror in the new Scream that was present in the original movie. In this way, the new Scream lives up to Wes Craven's legacy and honors the man who was a master in the genre. For this, the film is rightfully praised, but sadly, I do not share in critics' love of the modern Scream. While it does honor Craven's legacy and does a solid job as a commentary on current horror trends and requels, the movie falls short to me in story, character, depth, and emotion. Yes, Scream is a simple slasher franchise, but each subsequent film adds more layers to the characters and how their pasts catch up, connecting each film with the other. In this way, while not perfect, the original Scream trilogy does tell one conclusive story. Scream 4, already felt tacked on as is, made some sense as the film that tackled remakes. Now we get requels with new characters having deep connections to our classic legacy characters. And while sometimes clever, it just all feels done before. Every subsequent sequel focuses on the killers doing their best to recreate the original film, which is what sequels do. But Craven and Williamson always felt clever in the way they lambasted these ideas while connecting it to the characters' motives. Add on top of this Sidney Prescott's character development and personal demons over the course of the series, and the original 3 all feel like they at least have a solid reason for existing outside of just being satire of the genre. Scream 2022 doesn't sell me on being necessary in any way other than its satire of requels and modern tropes. Most of its new cast only exist for a body count, without much development. Outside of the clever Easter eggs and modern movie trend commentary, the film is not clever in the way it brings together the characters to mimic the originals, as we've seen similar ideas in Scream 2, 3, and 4. Even the legacy characters such as Dewey, Gale, and Sidney are not used to their full potential. Add on top of this that even the kills are not as suspenseful and lack even in the jump scare department that the originals did so well, and we have a well-made commentary on modern film without any substance to back it up. It's fun to watch once for the commentary, but without characters I care about to bring me back, once is all I need to see of it. It doesn't dishonor Wes Craven's legacy, but it also doesn't do anything new or exciting with it either. I give Scream 2 out of 4 stars.
2 out of 4 stars for Scream. All right, I do want to start off with actually talking a little bit about what I can appreciate Scream for. Before I would just rib it, I actually do want to...
Wait, Scream 4 or this one?
Oh, sorry. Scream. How did I say? I can appreciate Scream.
Scream 4.
About this movie particularly? What you appreciate about
what Scream
2022?
does, Scream in general. And kind of what this movie, and of course the whole idea around theme or the whole theme around Scream is poking fun at the tropes of horror films
Slasher films.
and slasher flicks in general, but also having this underlying notion of subverting your expectations for what to expect. And I do feel like at least in most of the Scream series, because now we're up to 5, that they have done a good job of portraying what is popular in culture right now and certain trends. And that I can at least appreciate Scream for that, because there'll be a good mark, I think, 20, 30 years down the road to look back on and kind of say, oh, that must have been in general what was going on in cinema throughout. And I think that's true for the most part.
No, there's a very the part towards the end of the film where they are in the house and the movie nerd is kind of sitting around talking about how she mentions Star Wars, and she mentions what was some of the other ones that she talked about?
Well, they mentioned Knives Out, and of course they make fun of elevated horror.
But it's just kind of funny because they specifically mention Star Wars
Ryan
with the
Johnson,
idea of the subverting expectations and how and how they brought back the original characters only to try to kill them off. And I appreciated that because it does. Like you said, it harkens to something that's much more recent and closer. If they would have only talked about films like Halloween or Friday the 13th or something like that, there's a younger audience watching this movie that probably have no idea about Nightmare on Elm Street or Friday the 13th
and a lot
or
of
some of those other
were
movies.
mentioned in the original movies.
Yes,
so it's kind of like they're
so
mentioning
they
the current
do kinda,
ones.
That was in the 90s, so those movies were for kids who grew up in the 80s and 90s.
And I think that's what they're trying. If anything, that's what they're trying, I think, to continue the legacy of Scream and what it is.
Yeah.
Is it speaks to the generation
Well,
that
I
it
do
specifically
wanna
is referencing.
defend the movie in the sense that I know I gave it 2. It was not a bad movie, and I thought its purpose as like the satire and commentary on film, it was actually very well done. I thought that was the best part of this movie. Is that
better than the fourth?
Its commentary in this movie. It's funny because the fourth movie and this movie have a lot of the same premise. Only this movie does it way better. I just felt like some of the characters were kind of like they dropped the ball in some of that in this movie, and that's just kind of where. If the fourth one didn't exist, this one came out as the fourth and was kind of the start of a new like type of trilogy, I would be very more pleased with that because I feel like this one kind of sets up the ball for future segments a lot better than four did. 4 was just bland, but what I do appreciate about 4 was the fact that I felt like it carried Dewey, Gil, and Sid's stories a lot better than this one. I kind of felt like they were afterthoughts in this one. And I wanted to see if they're going to be passing the torch. I wanted to see a little bit more emotion with their characters, and they tried. I mean, there is a huge moment halfway through the movie, and I don't want to spoil anything. That was meant to be this whole like 1, subvert expectations, and 2, to give you that emotional gut punch. But I didn't think it was well done.
I didn't think the payoff was there.
Yeah, it wasn't. So I have bounced back and forth between 2 and 2.5. I don't hate this movie. I think I just wanted more from it to justify why we're still like
why is it relevant
after the first 3 Screams. I'm like, why are we still making Scream movies anymore?
Well, yeah, and that,
Absolutely.
But going back to the fun that this movie makes of itself, that again it's making fun of the fact that the movie shouldn't even exist.
Yeah,
and I like that. Even the Matrix 4 or Resurrections.
I'm glad you brought
similar
that up because go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it does kind of make fun of the fact that. Producers and production companies like wanted to rehash this franchise and bring it back and make it relevant again. But in the end, I mean, even from recent articles, we've kind of seen that Resurrections is almost definitely going to.
That was the nail in the coffin.
They're not going to make a 5th one.
Now, on the other hand, this movie's doing great at the box office, and they're already talking about making another one.
Far surpassed after one weekend.
Well, yeah. I was referring more to the quality of the film less than how much it made.
Yeah.
But I understand what you're saying. Yeah, it's definitely doing better at the box office, but The Matrix wasn't a bad movie, but again,
nobody cared.
Nobody cared. And that's how I feel about
apparently people
Scream in a way.
But apparently people do care about
I know.
this one.
It's also the first horror movie of the year or first scary movie of the year.
That, and I do
Everybody
think
turns out to see scary movies.
I think there were a lot of fans.
Craven too.
That because a lot of the buildup was that this was a homage to Craven and what he was brought to the horror genre and with the original Scream. But also, I think, too, this was the first time that we were hopefully going to see maybe a return to what the first Scream really was. And again, it was kind of billed as we're going to rewrite the wrongs of the fourth one. And instead, it kind of became a tongue-in-cheek joke of why people were pissed about the fourth one. And while I was okay with that, I wasn't okay with that being the main premise and thread throughout the entire film.
Yeah.
And I wanted a little bit more meat on the bone. And even Keith brought it up when we were driving to the theater, how the first three at least have a cohesive through plot.
Yeah.
Apart from just the tropes that they're playing to and catering to. And I really thought this one was going to have a chance to do that, especially because the fourth one became, in a way, its own sense of poking and jabbing. It was Wes Craven's sign off of saying, hey, well, you know what? You wanted me to make another Scream. We're going to do it, but now we're going to do it to a new generation, and we're going to make it a commentary on the generation and culture as a whole.
And I do appreciate it going, because at least, like you said, with the through points with the third one, and a lot of that dealing with like these characters back, like Sydney's parents and backstory, and how that created this whole mess. I did appreciate how they did try to tie this one into some of those themes with the new lead girl, like her past. I was like, okay, so I kind of get what they're going for there. I didn't want to spoil anything, but she is connected to a legacy character.
Right.
And the way they kind of tie that in does fit a little bit better with the first three Screams than, of course, 4 did, where it was just randomly her cousin. And it's like, oh, she had a cousin this whole time. It's
Yeah.
like, oh,
Right.
okay.
Yeah.
So I just...
But again, like you said, I think that's kind of how this one's played in there too.
Yeah.
In a tongue-in-cheek way, they make fun of it, but at the central point
I
of
thought
being...
it made more sense, though, than the last one.
No, it did. True, it did. But it was still a weak way of, we don't need to do this. We don't need to connect this back to those three. You're only doing so, again, to serve the underpoint or the underpinning of what you're making fun of in the film, which is the requels. And I ultimately ended up on 2 stars as well, specifically because, again, it was entertaining for one watch. But I ultimately agree with Sean in the sense that I really don't see the Scream franchise being any more than what it originally was with the first Scream. And yeah, 2 and 3 came after that, and 2 they both cleverly developed, or I guess enhanced the franchise to at least make it seem like it was worthy to be had.
Yeah.
And of course the story and the plot continue. But the ultimate real reason why Scream was so popular in the first place was because it was, we're going to have a slasher flick
different.
after, and because everybody had already seen all these slasher flicks, they had become ridiculous with the amount of endless sequels, and they were trying to truly continue a story that was absurd.
Yeah.
And Scream was like, okay, we'll do a slasher flick, but we'll make fun of all those,
Yep.
and we'll start our own kind of sub-genre / meta horror flick. And yet, while that was creative, nothing more clever has been done with the franchise. And even with these last 2 iterations, I don't really see this franchise sticking to serve any other purpose than relating and referencing the culture that it exists in.
One critic, and I agreed with him 100%, had said that this movie kind of falls somewhere in between like 2018's Halloween reboot requel and Halloween Kills. Like, it wasn't quite as well done as Halloween, like being a return to the original, but it was better than Halloween Kills, which was abysmal.
Oh, that was...
And I was like, I agree with that.
True.
This movie does kind of fall in between that as far as like being this requel. And yeah, I just feel like Scream, it had its time in the 90s, and I mean, it definitely cemented its place for its like in horror history.
Yeah.
But it's something that's that way more, I think, of a pop hit than just a huge massive, like, I don't think a lot of just audience members gravitate towards Scream as like, oh yeah, that's my all-time favorite horror film. I think horror, like deep horror fans like Scream, but it doesn't have a wide appeal the same way that Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street do. And it's one of those things like, just like Saw, Paranormal Activity, now The Conjuring. It's like they were good for a time, but now it's time for it to be done.
Yeah.
It's like Paranormal Activity was good for 3.
And think
we
about
didn't need more.
I mean, what makes those other films, I mean, you have the central character of Freddy Krueger, Jason, or Michael Myers. And it's like, in Ghostface,
he's always a new killer.
Exactly.
That's what I was getting ready to... Yeah.
But that's the thing, is like, you have the iconic look, but the killer's always different, so you don't
Somebody's
get it
always
attached.
picking up the mantle.
And how many times can some random person that's related to one of the other characters,
original cast members,
become a
pop
villain?
up?
It's like every movie. It's like, oh look, here's a twist. This person is somehow related to the original killer.
Yeah.
And it's like we've had this 5 times. It's like, how many times are we going to get
Right.
some secret relative that becomes the killer?
Yeah.
And another thing that this film I thought dropped the ball on was in the very purpose it set out to write, the ship that it tried to write, which is, subverting those expectations in the right way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I understand you're trying to still pay homage to what originally was the groundwork laid before you, but then there's also moments where you could have drastically changed the formula to say, see, this isn't the same movie you were expecting. We are going to change it up.
Yeah.
And that's where I think some of the emotional gut punches you were talking about would have been more impactful. And even, I think, a scene in particular where the killer is almost caught. I think all but 3 have 2 killers.
Yeah.
And that's a known theme or trope of Scream.
Yeah.
And I was really hoping that in this one, there's a scene halfway through the film where you think the killer could be unmasked. And I was like, I actually thought they were going to unmask him and you'd see one killer well before the end of the film. And I would have been like, that's cool. That's creative.
Yeah,
and they
right.
would have thought, hey, we found out the killer. They're done. Oh, no, there's still killings. Oh, well, duh, because there's always 2.
Yeah. 2.
And that was just one of those little things where, even if you could have seen it coming a little bit when it plays up to that
It still
moment,
would have been unique.
it would have been a good payoff
Yeah.
because of all the other films that didn't do that.
Well, at a certain point in this film, they try to misdirect you. They try to take you.
Well, they
give you-
always do,
Yeah, they
yeah.
always do. But at a certain point in this film, it was done so many times that it became to the point. Well, if they're misdirecting me, or if they're taking my focus off of that character, then that's probably really the killer. They're trying to make me think it's somebody else, but it's really the
It's kind
very
of funny
because
I think we all 3 did guess pretty quickly who
Who
the
it
killers
was.
were.
Well, yeah, and even at one point they try to make you think, well, maybe the main character's the killer,
Yeah.
and there's something going on in her head, and all this stuff, and I'm
Yeah.
like, no. They're
I
yeah.
agree. The misdirects
got-
were not as well done in this
No.
movie as they were in
Keith,
some
well,
of
there's
the
too
others.
you brought
many.
it up.
There's just too many.
Keith, you brought up another good one. I think you might have explained it before you recorded the review, but you were talking about how people have gone back in the other ones. Go ahead.
In the original 3, you can actually, if you watch each killing and where, like, after knowing who the killers are and know like where they are in each scene, you can actually, and fans have, you can get a list of the original 3. You can find out which killer killed which victim, like, because there's always 2. Because once you know it and you actually see how well done the movie is, you can be like, oh, in this scene it was Stu, in this scene it was Billy, because Billy's in jail during this moment, so this is when Stu's doing that. And you could actually pinpoint that really well in the original 3. Like, it's always easy to tell who's doing what, like, after you figure it out. And whereas I felt like 4 and 5, it's kind of, they didn't have that attention to detail, just like with the in the middle. There's one killing where the killer, like, basically guts the person, like, they one in the gut, one in the back, goes straight up.
Yeah,
and when it's revealed which killer did that, it's like they didn't have the strength.
There's no way.
It wasn't as well. I thought the attention to detail there wasn't as
Their
well done.
height alone,
is
a big giveaway.
Yes.
They had, I forget, like, the actor that does Ghostface, just like Halloween, they have like stunt actors, and it's like, but you have to make them match the
body type of the person who's the killer.
It's like, obviously, it's like this
one
big
person's
burly
5 feet tall, and the other the killer's actually 6 feet tall. It's like, that's not.
That's a dead giveaway.
Yeah. But again, is that just the movie's bad attempt at subverting your?
No, I think it's like what you said.
It's misdirection.
I think it's misdirection, but poorly done.
It's very poorly done.
I think Keith hit the nail on the head when you were talking about how it thinks it's more clever than it really is, and I think a lot of people are trying to give it more credit because, again, it's a hats off to Wes Craven.
And almost it is clever in the movie commentaries it has. Like, I think a lot of the stuff they make fun of with, like, the Babadook and Ryan Johnson, all that stuff was really funny. And I thought, it's like, okay, all that makes sense and is Scream.
Yeah.
But then even the very meta, like, look behind you, idiot. And she's watching Stab, which is a meta version of Scream.
Yes.
And there's somebody behind her. Like, it's funny.
Yeah. Well, and again, that's
they know what they're
mimicking
doing.
the original, because Randy did that in the original. He's on the couch and he's like, look behind you, and the killer's behind him. So I get, like, all that stuff I did think was really well done. I just felt like some of the cleverness behind who the killers were, and the fact that really only 2 or 3 of the new characters really have personalities. The rest of them are all just kind of stereotypes. And I know the original, that was the point. A lot of the characters are stereotypes, but they still had their own, like, they were the stereotype and they had their own motives. In this, I felt like most of the teens that are getting killed are just stereotypes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, it's one thing also to have Dewey stabbed 9 times is what they say in the movie, and he survives.
Yeah.
That's like, yeah, well, that's a main character. Like, that's not. But I mean, in this film, there were so many people that got stabbed 100 freaking times, and then they end up surviving. And I'm like, this is just stupid.
Yeah, it's
like,
ridiculous.
You take me out of the fear factor by making it completely unbelievable.
Because at least with Dewey in the other movies, like it happens in the first and the second, but it's always towards the end where they make you think, oh, he got killed, and it's like, oh, he survived, but it was only the one character, and it was kind of a running trope because it was Dewey. In this, it's like, you have like three people
it's almost like they don't want to kill the character that everybody loves.
That's what ultimately made me kind of more upset. Is I'm like, the less victims though means the less, I don't know, like you said, the less scared I am that somebody's going to die then. And even the ones that do die, I just don't have any kind of emotional connection to.
Yeah.
So there we have it. Definitely worth a watch if you are a fan of Scream.
And I mean, this movie is getting a lot of praise from most people. I mean, I think I'm not trying to steer anyone away from watching it because they may like it. I just felt like it
maybe
was
getting a little too much praise.
It's one of those things where I feel like at this point, I just don't see why. Like, just like with I said, some of those other movies, like it's like, why are we still making these movies?
Because people go see them.
Why Paramount Plus released a new Paranormal Activity that I didn't even know was coming out.
I didn't know that
Yeah,
either.
It's on there now.
Wow.
It actually came out like a couple months. It came around, I think, around Halloween, and I didn't know it existed.
What about the next Cloverfield? Where's the next Cloverfield at?
So I'm just one of those things. Like, are people still watching Paranormal
Paradox
Activity?
was terrible.
It was awful, god awful.
Yeah, that's why there hasn't been another one of those.
We got a Super Bowl coming up. Who knows? It may drop. That's what they're good at doing. They drop them right away. But it was terrible. And everybody went home and watched it and was like, this is why they dropped it last minute.
Yeah. A Quiet Place was originally one of the scripts J.J. Abrams wanted to turn into a Cloverfield, because that's what he does. He takes scripts.
And then he just turns it into
Cloverfield. Yeah. And the original Quiet Place script was one of them he thought about doing.
I did not know that.
And then the producers were actually like, no, you know what? This one's really good. We think it'll stand on its own. And then,
thank God John Krasinski took that one.
And he came in and he rewrote a lot of the script and made it, I guess, better because it's a great movie.
Yeah, the third one of those has been delayed. That was part of the big delay from is it Paramount?
Yeah, the ones
Paramount
who also
keeps,
delayed Top Gun.
Yeah,
again.
They keep pushing
and Mission
everything
Impossible.
Back. And I'm like,
no, not Top
Gun.
They
didn't do Top Gun.
Mission Impossible.
Yeah, 7 and 8.
They did delay Mission Impossible again, but I'm like, why are we still delaying movies, Paramount? Like, I don't.
No reason. They even have a streaming service already that you can't access anymore. Alrighty, guys,
you can if you own an Xbox.
Let's move into our headlines.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
We are. We got some headlines to jump right into.
Oh, here she comes.
Oh, it's not even towards the end of the show.
Keeps making noises.
Yeah.
See,
She always
I
jumps on
snapped
me
my finger a minute ago and she came running.
during the.
she does.
When we do the headlines, she does
It's
sometimes
like,
jump
look,
on
I'm
me.
not talking to you.
Come here, Pop.
I'm not snapping for you.
Come here, Edie. Come here. She's trying to. I'll give you some love. All right, but let's introduce the headline topic.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about Mr. Bradley Cooper.
Well, we've already talked
An
about one of the
interesting
headlines in our
article.
opening. So.
Yeah, we did. It was an unofficial headline.
Yeah.
But Mr. Bradley Cooper has been talking about all these new revenues that are coming from streaming.
Yeah.
And he's kind of given us a little insight as to, what films he's willing to take a risk on and what he's not.
Well, I like he actually said he's glad because, with theaters not doing so well, they're not really getting money from people going to the theaters. I mean, it mentions Nightmare Alley only making just shy of $10 million. And it's like, that's awful.
That's awful.
And it is. And he says it's coming to, he mentioned HBO Max and Hulu, and he said he thinks it'll do much better there. And I agree, because it is a good movie, but it was released like the same time as Spider-Man.
Now, see,
nobody was going to see that over Spider-Man.
Well, and that was kind of the honestly, the whole disappointing month of December. Not for Marvel.
Was there
Spider-Man fans?
There was too much stuff.
There was way too much stuff, and Spider-Man rolled
Killed
the
it
roost
all.
for everything. I mean, you had Matrix, you had Nightmare Alley, you had there was another huge one that came out.
Kingsman.
That was the other one.
I feel like there was one more that. West Side Story.
Well, that was because of
it was
COVID.
It was supposed to. Yeah,
that was because of COVID. People.
And then a
didn't go
week
see
later,
that.
everybody went to see Spider-Man.
I know. Hey, got to put a spin on it. But no, I think it's interesting, an article, because I think it gives you insight into a realistic perspective from a Hollywood star who's been in the director's chair. I mean, you can't forget about A Star Is Born. And he specifically even brings up how for A Star Is Born and American Sniper, he actually took a little bit more of a hit up front by, wanting some rights on the back end, taking that risk of if it's successful, it'll pay off.
Oh, yeah.
Those were very successful. However, he's talking about now, because theaters aren't doing so well, or even in the post-pandemic era of not knowing really when theaters are going to get back up to the normal run-of-the-mill. Because I really do think Nightmare Alley was one of those films that, with Guillermo del Toro's name, had it been released 2-3 months earlier, I think it actually would have performed decently.
Maybe if it was released this month when there's nothing else coming out, it
True.
may have done well.
But they wanted to hit that awards rush.
Yeah.
And
Well, they could have had a limited.
they
and did
could
a
have.
wide,
I don't know why they did. And honestly, I don't know if that was just the theater screw up, or if even in their mindset, hey, we know it's going to HBO Plus or HBO Max, and we know it's going to Hulu. So in that sense alone, it's like, were they already anticipating that it was going to do so poorly in theaters? They were just ready for the streaming release, and they were just banking on the fact that it was going to be successful there? Because Bradley Cooper himself kind of, I don't know, he teeters on this fine line of, look, there's this new movie he's working on right now with Netflix, and he says they're footing the bill
Paying
entirely.
for it, yeah.
And he said,
And
I'm
it wouldn't be-
extremely grateful.
Yeah, it wouldn't be made otherwise. Like Netflix is the only one willing to, make the movie.
Yep,
So-
they'll pay for anything. All they got to do is just raise their subscription prices.
Yeah. That's true.
That is true.
It's
Not-
like we're hemorrhaging money and we're going to
$20
spend
now.
even more, but
and not to mention the fact that it's like, I mean, didn't they just recently also, you said, Keith, they started putting ads in the
well,
front of
their
some
ads
of
are
the-
for their own stuff though.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So it's not like at some places you get ads even though you pay the full tier price of like regular.
Peacock, it's stupid. It's like if I pay for something I shouldn't have. But Hulu's lower tiered version is the same way. You have the lower tier you pay for that has ads, and then the higher tier that doesn't. I'm like, there should be, if I pay, there should be no tier with ads. Like if
Yeah.
I'm paying you money.
Yeah.
Well, and think
HBO
about
Max is doing it too. They have ads before. Like when you start a show or whatever, it
But
has
it's
an ad, but
their
it's
own-
all
yeah,
their own
okay.
It's
stuff.
a-
So I
and I
don't mind
think
seeing it because
you
it's
can
actually
skip it.
drawn me. Yes.
Yeah, and you can.
Yes,
you
you
can
can skip them.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Because Prime does that. Prime will
Yes.
advertise their stuff,
But you can
and
skip.
it.
Yeah.
And there are times where I'll start something and I'm about to skip it, and I'm realizing I'm walking in the other room to grab like a Coke or
Yeah,
something.
sometimes just
and
let
I'm
it
like,
play.
I'll let it play. I'll let it go.
Yeah.
But I do think it's funny because he brings up specifically, I mean, we think about another Netflix big release coming out. I think it's later this year. Is Scorsese's next film. Is it Flowers of the Moon or Flowers?
Flower.
No, it's similar.
I forgot the title. It is. It's skipped.
pulling
That's I think that's right though.
It's
Is
like
there-
the Flower Moon something.
Look, just correct me on that one. But I think it's interesting because, Scorsese, I think, would fit into that old guard of kind of like with Nolan and those others who obviously don't.
Killers of the Flower Moon.
Killers of the Flower
Killers
Moon.
of the Flower Moon.
But I think he fits more in line with wanting to make sure that theaters still have a presence. And Bradley Cooper's very much on the side of, no, he doesn't think theaters are going anywhere, and he even compares it to something like the opera.
Yeah.
There's still going to
Yeah,
be
but
a.
Opera ticket prices. The opera used to be the theater. Everybody went. Like
Well, it was
now,
in
it's you got
mass
to put on a
demand.
tuxedo and pay $100 a ticket.
The same thing
I
with,
don't
like-
want movie theaters to be like that.
Yeah, it's the same thing like going to a play. I mean, it's not $100 a ticket, but it's still more expensive.
ridiculous.
You
Yeah.
got $20 to go see a play.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, too. I mean, theaters became. I mean, it went from one mass medium to the next, but even operas were still considered, I think, in their day. I mean, it'd be like going to see a symphony
It was a
or an orchestra
prestigious
play.
thing.
Exactly. It was
Yeah,
something
I agree with that.
was a treat in and of itself because
Yeah.
you don't always do it.
Yeah.
But also, I think that's kind of I think that's how entertainment is in general. It's once it reaches a mass audience and it can be more consumed. I mean, that's what we've seen with streaming. You kind of get into this,
It gets diluted.
it gets yes.
Yeah, I mean, it gets
definitely
kinda-
gets
yeah,
diluted
yeah.
and gets over. You have way too saturated, way too much out there. But also, it does for the things that he even brings up specifically about the movies that inspired him. He didn't even see in the theater. He specifically saw them on a smaller screen at home, but it still made him want to go, and make movies because they inspired him. He talks about The Godfather and Oh gosh, I'm trying to find the paragraph here.
They're doing a 4K remaster of that. That's going to be on Paramount Plus, and I do want to see.
Oh,
what that looks
really?
Like. Yeah.
That might be absolutely worth.
Which
checking
means if
out.
it's on Paramount Plus, it'll be available other places. But yeah, dude. They're doing Paramount Plus is doing a 4K remaster of the first Star Trek movie too, but that movie's awful. So I don't know why they're bothering with.
Because fans.
I mean,
guess.
Fans would rather have Wrath of Khan in a 4K
True.
remaster. But yeah, you said the movie. Are you looking for the movies that inspired?
Oh, here it
him,
is.
or-
Yeah, I found the paragraph. He just says, I saw some great movies there, but the movies that changed my life and inspired me to do what I do for a vocation were The Elephant Man, Godfather, Apocalypse Now, Shampoo, Coming Home, and Deer Hunter. He said all of those movies I saw on a 16-inch television
16-inch.
set. I know. That's what's crazy.
Yeah, no.
16 inches.
Yeah.
And here we are complaining, I got to watch them a 65-inch.
Yeah.
I mean, and in like 4K HDR, like
know.
as close to realistic theater, you know, with surround sound. I mean, that's the beauty of it is I think far too often we put our, you know, I think you have those directors who have the silver screen at mind. And of course, that's always pushing the technology forward. But that in turn helps everything else evolve in the medium. And far too often, I mean, we come on here and talk about it all the time how we are, you know, products
Everybody.
of wanting the gizmos and the gadgets and the newer things. And so
Give me new.
But I think it's funny because I see it, you know, both sides of the spectrum. Of course, I'm like you, Sean. I don't want the theaters to go to a huge premium price because, you know, it is such a spectacle that you can only get there, but it's so uncommon because everything's going to streaming. But if that's what it becomes, and that pushes the movies that are in the theater to an even greater extreme of reaching a different kind of atmosphere or pushing the medium to whatever the next evolution or revolution is. 4D, being surrounded, smelling
I
everything.
want to smell it.
Smell that blood. That looks so rich.
So rich and red. It's beautiful.
But I think far too often we talk about from a filmmaker's perspective of wanting to preserve where it is they found the love of the medium.
Yeah.
And here, I mean, some of these movies, Apocalypse Now,
Yeah.
Godfather, I mean, you talk to any of the old greats, they would blast you and say that's blasphemy for seeing that, you know, anywhere but the theater.
I wasn't born when the first Godfather
That's-
came
yeah.
out.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
I had to see it on a TV screen, but I loved the movie all the same because it's a good movie.
And think about the movies we went and seen in the theaters.
For me, that's like Star Wars. You know, like I wasn't around in the 70s, so I didn't get to see Star Wars in theaters like my dad did.
Yeah.
But to see it, you know, I saw it on VHS first.
Yeah.
And then when they re-released them in theaters, of course I went.
Yep.
But,
Yep.
you know, yeah, that's how you see the great is on a little 16-inch screen. Mine was a square.
Well, and he specifically makes that point. He says, you know,
Tube TV.
Again,
Yep.
content is king. And it's like at the end of the day, if the content surpasses that, you know, that barrier that's in front of you of entry, then you don't have to worry about how you see it or how you consume it. It's going to be transformative either way. And I
That's
I
right.
applaud him because I think that's really the evolution we're
Good
in.
film speaks for itself.
Yeah, no doubt, 100%. So good on Bradley Cooper. I'm actually in the same boat he is in, and obviously, yeah, I think, you know, you can get into the weeds a little bit more with what he's talking about with regards to, you know, again, content is king, but what do you do when there's so much out there?
Yeah.
And how do you wade through all that there is? Because there's bound to
There's
be
too much.
some
Oh, yeah.
stuff that's so great, but then there could be 50 different great movies that get lost in the weeds because there's one that pops up to the top of the pile, and you watch it, but then you forget about the rest.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's the crazy aspect of where I think Netflix is playing in this dangerous water of we're just going to snatch up all these properties.
Because that's also why so many shows that people think are amazing and love get canceled, because even though they are good shows, there's so much content, there's not enough people watching these shows to keep them.
Yeah,
to
they're
keep
gonna
Netflix,
they're gonna keep the ones that people gravitate towards.
Yeah.
and then you there might be a good show that gets like the first season, and then it gets canceled, and you're like, what the hell? But it's just obvious there was a lot more people watching this than were watching the one that
And
you're interested in.
that doesn't necessarily mean anymore that the show that was canceled was bad like
No.
it used to. It just means that it didn't garner enough interest.
Absolutely.
It stinks.
Let's
Dark
move on
Crystal.
to Mr. He's gonna always bring that up. I don't blame you, man. You should be
Bitter about that one.
He'll keep watching that first season and be like, I'm getting the view count up.
It was
I'll bring it back.
I mean, it was so well done, but that's exactly why I got canceled, because you could tell a lot of money went into that show.
Oh, yeah.
A lot.
Well, and that's where I will give Netflix the benefit of the doubt in that regard. You at least know what they're going to put into it is going to be the amount that you would want to see put into it.
Yeah.
It's just they really are on that side of boom or bust.
Yeah.
And if not enough people pay attention to it, they cut it.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, crap. You saw the potential of what it could be, and no doubt that was its fullest potential.
Yeah.
Like the Dark Crystal. It just sucks.
It's okay. They still have The Witcher and Stranger Things, so I'm okay.
Yeah.
Those are both
Well,
amazing.
Stranger Things only has like 2 more seasons.
No, but that's on their own terms, and I'm okay with that. It's,
Yeah.
No, I would
I'm
agree.
glad when a
But
creator
that's like
ended on their own
that would be their
terms.
7th season, though, right?
6.
6. Yeah, they're working
they
on
were on-
they're on their 4th coming out now.
Oh, I thought
Yeah.
the 4th
Actually,
was already over.
I
with.
actually really think there's only 5. I think
there's
mentioned
only,
that there's only supposed to be 5.
Yeah, I think the 4th
Really?
and then 5th I think is supposed to be
oh,
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
I mean,
and-
5
well-
seasons is a great run,
and not only
especially
that-
if it's good for all 5 seasons.
if all 5 seasons are quality, I mean Breaking Bad's only 6,
Yeah.
and even that I would argue is you take the last season, it's split up. So really, I think it's 5 if you count it.
yeah, they count it as
They-
5, but
yeah.
because they split it in 2.
But it's you can't get a better show.
Yeah.
And I mean that tells you
Yellowstone.
quality, not quantity. Hey, I'm
Yellowstone
starting it.
It's good.
It's good. You're gonna like it.
I already subscribed to. I went to Peacock Premium Plus.
Yeah,
I didn't want no ads.
You didn't want no
Yeah.
ads.
I just want to keep rolling
Yeah.
through. So I'm ready. Alrighty, guys, let's move on to our last headline that we're going to talk about this evening.
Which one?
Mr. Peter Dinklage.
Oh, you don't want to
for
talk
Bradley Cooper.
You don't want to talk about Alec
We're gonna talk
Baldwin?
about the dwarf.
I want to talk about that ridiculous imp of a man.
Oh man.
Man,
I
you're
tried
gonna
to-
really tick him off.
Look. I tried to throw out a Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Tyrion.
Yeah.
So
I tried to throw out a.
I will say, like, my initial reaction, I just thought it was
Insult
comical
from
because
James
I was like, why is he being offended by
Comical and hypocritical.
Snow White, which is about dwarves as in like the mythical creature dwarves, not midgets.
Yes.
And he played, he was in Game of Thrones, and then he played a dwarf in Marvel's Avengers. Granted, he was a giant
A
dwarf.
giant dwarf, which I think was just a comical play on the whole
Oh,
dwarf thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I kind of, after seeing some of like his past interviews, I think I kind of understand a little bit more, because I did read where someone said that his interview is kind of being taken out of context because it was
See,
on a
that's what I
podcast.
thought.
So after reading some of his past interviews, I feel like it's not so much he's opposed to. Because there's one thing he mentions in a past interview about Gary Oldman. I don't remember the movie. Gary Oldman played in a movie where he was a midget. And Peter Dinklage said, like, it's
I
not
wanna
a
see that.
Yeah, Peter Dinklage.
Mank.
Apparently, it's a good movie, and it got some praise at the time. And Peter Dinklage was like, it's not a bad movie, and I don't have hard feelings against Gary Oldman for playing a midget. But why didn't they just hire a midget? And he kind of has this thing is like, why don't you give these roles to? So I was like, okay, maybe that's what he's talking about. But at the same time, we don't know who's going to play. Like,
Freaking Gimli's not
Yeah.
a real life dwarf, but he plays a great
see,
Gimli.
and I don't know how he feels about stuff like that. Is he mad? Like does he think 'cause-
Representation.
Because he's also said stuff like he doesn't take roles like on stereotypical like midget roles like leprechauns and this or that. But I was like, but then you were a midget and elf making fun of elves. So
I
I
was
don't.
say he sounds like an angry elf.
And
from
he
the
just
South Pole.
he just signed on I think a year or two ago for a movie of Rumpelstiltskin with Sony. So I'm like, so it's like, but I'm like, why is Rumpelstiltskin
Wow,
okay,
yeah.
but not Snow White the Seventh? So I don't really know where he's coming from. I'm really confused because it's like,
Here's what I took it as, and granted, I read the Variety article we linked to. It's a little bit more vulgar, but it's worth the read.
Yeah.
Yeah.
because it does. I
He
think
does.
Oh, he's a
flesh
full-
it out.
he's-
Oh,
Cuss pretty good. Yeah.
here's the thing. I've never.
I think he is Tyrion.
Well, no, I think he is just a very. He's not one that just takes on a role to take money. He wants to be considered a serious
No,
actor.
he does,
and
yes.
and I don't blame him for that.
He's
like
a great
anybody
actor,
with
yeah.
he is. But I also think he wants to elevate beyond. Oh, I'm just going to hire that guy because he's a great actor, but he's a dwarf. He's our number one dwarf. And I get
He
that.
doesn't want to get typecasted to like, well, we need a midget. Hire Peter Dinklage.
Right.
Yeah.
And I totally understand that. But at the same time, you still are limited by that physical capability. And not to the extent that it impedes your acting,
Yeah.
but it does impede what roles you can play based on what they have for the role. I mean, look, you're in Cyrano, and that specifically isn't about a midget, but they made the disability
Actually,
at which
I think they say midget is an offensive term now.
I don't
just
care.
wanted to let you
I'm
know.
not going to be
I said it.
We've
Sue.
said it like 20
8
times.
times.
I've
and
said
you're
it
just now-
already. I was
you're
just
you're
thinking
just
about
like
that.
Disney. You're progressive about one thing, but then
Yeah.
not about another.
Well, and I think
Yeah.
that's where I think he's getting taken out of context and most of his points coming through. I think he's kind of half-heartedly joking. Again, I haven't heard the full interview.
Yeah.
But what
I
I
haven't
read in the
either.
comments was, or in the way he was commenting was, he was like, look, if we're going to go all woke, we might as well just go all the
Well,
way.
that's what he said. He said
Yeah.
if
And
they
we-
were going to do something like just crazy, like progressive, he's all in.
Well,
But here's
yeah,
the
he
thing,
talks
they-
about them hiring a Latina to play Snow White,
Right.
which is just funny. But,
Yes.
but
Well, I guess it never claims she has to be.
no, of course
She
not.
has skin as white as snow.
Snow, yeah, and you're
most
gonna hire
Latinos
a-
don't.
Most Latinas don't.
Yeah.
Tan skin. Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't make much sense.
They do have raven
like
black
you
hair,
have
but yeah, they
skin
don't
as
have the
white
white
as
as snow.
Hey,
dirty
maybe
snow.
we'll see the world's first, we'll see the world's first
That's
white
racist.
face.
yes.
Maybe we'll see the world's first
They did
white,
white
face.
face
White
and
face.
Scrubs. It's not the first.
They also did blackface.
They
in
did,
Scrubs.
but
that's canceled.
Yeah, they can't do that. White face is
Actually,
okay,
white
not-
chicks
white chicks
with
yeah,
the
that was
the
first.
Wayans brothers.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Oh,
terrible,
big
terrible
movie.
movie.
Yes.
Not
Yep.
because they did whiteface. It's just a bad movie.
But ultimately, I'm like, I look at his comments in such a way. See, now she's getting rowdy.
I don't know what. I didn't
It's not even that
this
time. But Edie down, get
She really
down.
is. She wants some attention.
she does.
What have you been doing to your dog?
I leave her alone all day. She's alone. She's lonely because I'm at work. I'm
People go-
sorry, puppies. She's also torn up. If I go to the tall cam here, I just they can't really see it.
Yeah.
One camera's covering it. But no, okay. So ultimately, I do think Peter Dinklage is just kind of making a point of saying, look, if you're going to go into this woke kind of recipe, then you got to go full on in.
Yeah.
But I think even Keith, you brought this up when you first sent us the article. It's like you don't know what they're going to do. Who know? I mean,
The
they,
only
for all we
people
know,
cast
they
so
could
far
literally
are-
show dwarf. I mean, hell, look at Oompa Loompas. They were midgets,
Yeah.
but in the newer film, I don't think they were. They weren't full. They were
No,
just
they had-
shorter people.
He had a.
Did they have midgets?
Yeah, the midget.
Oh, never
he was a
Little people.
little person. There's a
Little
there's a stand-up comedian who, and I can't think of his name, but he actually makes fun of that because he's like, it's stupid. I'm a midget, and I think he's hilarious. But anyways, that's not the point of the topic. It is, yeah. The only people they've cast so far are Jenna Ortega and Gal Gadot. We don't know who's going to play any of the dwarves, so I think it's a little early to really be lambasting them when we don't really know how
they could pull a Hobbit
could.
situation, and they could stereoscopically or just
funny.
They could
CGI.
just have normal sized
mention,
people like you said.
He doesn't mention the Huntsman. And in the Huntsman, they used real normal sized people and they made them into dwarves and midgets.
Well, that's what they
And
did
it's
with
very
the Gary
Nick
Oldman
Frost
movie.
is like they have him as a freaking dwarf
I
and it's
could see that.
hilarious.
I could see that definitely.
I mean, he's amazing, but it's you took a normal sized guy and downed him into a
That's
dwarf.
almost what I expect them to do.
Yeah,
because they're especially now that this outburst happened and it's getting some coverage. I could see Disney outwardly going.
But
that
then you have his
direction.
issue where he feels like midgets should be given more roles that they could take.
That's why I'm
it's like-
confused by
it's
his
like,
statement.
Yeah,
'cause
what does
even,
he want?
Even in the article, he says all love and respect to the actress, referring to the Latina, and all the people who thought they were doing the right thing. But I'm just like, what are you doing? And I think I really do
he's
think
criticizing
he
the
is.
story.
Yeah, well, it's a story about Snow White and Seven Dwarfs. Like, what are you gonna?
Yeah.
That's the story. You can't change the
Then
story.
maybe we just need to get rid of that. We shouldn't do that story anymore.
I think
'cause it's
he's.
offensive.
I
don't
feel
know.
like he's actually saying you're getting woke with hiring a diverse actress to play Snow White, but you're keeping the dwarves. Make up your mind. That's exactly what I hear him saying. I don't really
Maybe.
hear him
And maybe,
getting
yeah.
offended about the dwarf thing. I think
Well,
he's more
but he
offended.
does have the
about-
one line of he's like, what was all this for? Like,
he said,
like-
have I not been loud enough on my soapbox or
yeah,
something like that?
almost
So,
like
yeah.
he's fighting for the dwarf
Well, he is-
community.
he-
I mean,
and he
what
does-
are
he-
you fighting for?
he
For
does
you to
been-
not have a job, or for you to have a job?
He just
Yeah.
wants a seat at the table.
Well,
a little
yeah.
taller.
But that's my question is the same one as Sean
Like
because he
Elf.
has been very outspoken throughout his career about like midget actors being taken seriously and getting serious roles. So I'm like, is he saying this isn't a serious role for midgets, or is he saying he wants them to get the roles? Like, I don't really
That's
know
what
what
I'm
he
saying.
wants.
Game of Thrones is his biggest role.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And that's his part. Like they didn't let him play Jaime Lannister.
Yeah.
They let him play the imp brother.
Well, and again,
that's the
I
the
love
purpose.
the whole tongue-in-cheek back and forth that he constantly has with people who make the dwarf jokes, and he's like, because that's not the first time I've heard that.
Yeah.
And it's honestly, that's exactly what you get from
Yeah.
most people
Yeah.
who are made fun of for whatever disability. It's not the first time I've heard that
It's
one.
not a disability.
Oh, sorry.
Jesus.
Wow.
Ability.
Wow.
It's a special power.
Gosh.
I mean,
Peter Dinklage would punch you right in the testicles.
he could. I don't care. He can headbutt me there if he wants.
Yeah.
I don't
I would
care.
let Peter Dinklage headbutt
I
me
would.
in the nuts.
I would too.
I think I would too.
But I don't think there's a single person at this table that would argue that his work has not been something that we can all look to and are gracious to have. He's an incredible actor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think too, when you go off in these tangents, and I mean, look, we say ridiculous crap on this podcast. When you're talking for 2 hours on a given podcast, you're going to say things or ruffle some feathers with some comments, and it could be something off the wall that he just said that he was just speaking his mind that
Yeah.
didn't intend to be taken seriously. I don't know how he feels at heart. I've always gotten this idea that when you see him in interviews, he's a little bit more, he wears a chip on his shoulder. I hate to say it, but I've always gotten this attitude from him. He likes his work, he does his job, but he kind of strikes me as one of those Hollywood actors that, unless I knew him personally and unless I got respect from him, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't be chummy with me. I don't get the sense that he would be real warm and friendly. He wants to do his job, and yet when he gets to know you real well, then maybe he opens up and talks to you and is a friend
Well,
to
that's
you.
exactly who he plays in Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
I mean, he plays a
don't know.
pretentious little prick in the beginning, but then the characters that he warms up to,
I think
he
Tyrion's
becomes
he's a
really
likable
good
guy, though.
He
He
I like
is, but, then
Tyrion.
but when they first introduce him, you're meant
No,
to think
he's
it's
a-
like, oh,
he's
this
a-
guy's just
he's a
He's a
jerk.
prick. Yeah,
exactly.
True.
With a big prick, according
Yeah.
to him.
yeah.
I mean,
I believe it.
I will say Shay, his woman.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, all right.
Yeah. She deserved what she got.
she didn't get the dwarf.
Yeah, oh no.
She got the full.
She got the bolt.
Alrighty, guys. I think we're
We gotta
ready
move on.
to finally move on to our relationships. Yeah.
Let me tell you about the birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees and the moon up above and a thing called love.
Oh, I like that little face.
I
Right
just read the notes for the first time.
there,
and
what did you
saw-
think?
Saw that on there.
Isn't that appropriate based on what we were just talking about?
Oh, absolutely.
What's the topic at hand, Keith?
What's more important, the little things or the big things? I added that last part.
Yeah, I know. I can tell.
I do that to Brandon often when he edits the notes. And
I
see,
notice them.
Oh, I know you do, because a lot of times I'll do it while he'll be editing something and it'll be
You'll
showing.
change it.
It'll show me him like typing it out, and then I'll just like go and mess it up. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm sure he's getting aggravated while he's trying to type these in, and I'm changing them while he's typing.
Oh, I've done it before. Where he straight up I've let him finish typing it
Yeah.
out, and then I just go and delete
Yeah.
it.
I got you that one time when you were editing from work.
Yes.
And he was typing it. I could see it typing
Oh,
on
you
your
came
computer
in.
here, and I
Yes.
started
Yeah.
typing it, and I just see delete, 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 and then he types something else, and then I type something. And he was like,
That's the
"Damn it, delete, delete."
that's
delete.
the beauty. That's the beauty of cloud services and
Yes.
having things linked.
That
is,
was
you
good.
know,
When they work right, you can play pranks, but when you need them to, they're not there.
they're not
But no, the big things or the little things.
big.
So let's
things.
talk about what really matters in your relationships. Do the little
Well,
things matter?
What's more important is how you worded it.
There you go.
Because it's like I would say they both matter definitely, but which one matters more? The
And-
big things. The big things.
There is no little things.
No,
for Keith.
because I thought about this back and forth, and I'm like, in
Only
a
goes
sense,
for
it's
the
like,
big
yeah, I mean, the little things definitely matter, but at the end of the day, like if your relationship's not like cemented and rooted in some of like the bigger ideals that you both share, like
Yeah.
whether that's politics, religion. I mean, there's some things that if
Yeah.
you differ greatly on some of the more important issues, sometimes that relationship doesn't work out because you don't have a foundation to build upon. So it's like, yeah, the little things like whether like he goes out of his way to open the car door for you. That's important, definitely.
I don't do that anymore.
But yeah,
Get
it's
on
like, what's more important? You open the car door for your wife, or you being a homicidal maniac? It's like, that's a bit, I know that's an
Hey,
extreme.
Don't bring that into this.
I know that's an extreme difference.
That was never on the table to begin with.
I know
That's off
an
limits.
That's an extreme exaggeration, but I'm just saying it's like the big things are, I think, where you get the foundation, and then the little things are what helps that foundation flourish.
Yeah. I would think the big things
It's
matter.
Like, I can open the door for you, or I can love you. Which one do you want? Which one do you want?
Exactly.
I can open the door for somebody I like, but I love you.
I was gonna say.
So
you should take it as a
don't get
compliment.
bent about me not opening the door anymore.
Exactly.
I did that to get in your pants. Now that I've
the big thing was more important. It's like, sex was more important than the door opening.
right.
Well, and how do you know that? Well, I don't know. It must depend on your big thing. If she let that get in her pants,
Oh gosh, come on.
I had to.
We're not
it was
talking
in the
about
notes.
that. Come on.
No.
Let's have some class.
I do think.
Whoa! Let me ask. Let me ask.
No,
you,
go ahead, go
Because
ahead.
wait a minute, because you are somewhat on the dating scene.
Yeah.
You are trying to pursue that. So
You're trying to
when
get
it
you
comes to swiping left or right on somebody and getting a date, are you gonna start with the little things, or are you gonna come right out of the gate and say, "Will you marry me?"
Oh. I mean, I'm just gonna do it on the app. I'm just gonna have it
on
in
the
my.
app.
It's gonna be in my bio.
It's
Just,
like
will you marry me?
first person to
swipe
swipe right.
This is what you get, baby.
Yeah, you're
right
gonna,
here.
You're gonna get down,
Oh,
dog.
come on, Edie.
You're
Get
gonna be
there.
like Luke Wilson or Owen Wilson standing in the crowd with that "Marry Me" sign.
Oh man, if J-Lo
J-Lo.
swipes right,
Yes, I will.
why not? I'll take a chance. No, I would agree with Keith. I think. Well, okay, it depends, but I ultimately think in your serious relationships, the big things matter the most, but they are also what allow for the little things to take precedent and become what helps.
Like once you have the big things in place, then the little things, it's like,
They're what
So
enshrine
once-
your
Once
relationship
the
and make
big
it
things
deeper.
are there, then the little things come.
Yeah. Yes.
Hey,
that- no, I'm
come on
agreeing.
now.
I'm agreeing, but I also think it depends because it ultimately depends on what your goal
So
is.
you're saying if I love my wife, I would open the door for her?
Well, no. That now, yes, that's
Yeah.
one way to show.
Sometimes when you love your wife,
There's other
you,
ways I
you
show
buy
it.
her flowers.
My
I
wife
think.
don't like flowers.
But
Well,
that's
then in
the
that case,
thing.
you're off
She
the hook.
don't like jewelry. She don't like flowers. Buying stuff is off the table.
But
I have
there's
to do-
little
I have to
sacrifices
do
you can
things.
make. Well, and that goes. Well, what's your love
I gave her
language?
2
is?
kids. Like what else? What else does she want?
Those are
wants
2 big
3.
things.
Give
no,
her 3.
Right? No, that ship has sailed.
They already gave away their baby stuff. Jacob's got part of it, so
Yeah.
Sean was like, "Let's pack it."
He's
up.
probably sitting in that chair rocking a baby right now.
Oh, no doubt. Oh, that baby's
I
gone.
can't remember if he
Asleep.
took the chair or not. I can't remember.
All I know is, look, it also depends on the relationship. Like you all
Yes.
both went to love romantic relationship.
Yeah.
But I think even amongst friends, I mean, there's going to be acquaintances where I think the bigger things matter because the little things aren't going to ever be present. I mean, there's certain people that I'm going to be acquaintances with that, it probably would show them a good deal of kindness that I remember if they like a certain film or a certain kind of music or a certain kind of food. But ultimately, it's never going to go deeper than that.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that because at the end of the day, I don't want to get to know them on the level that the littlest thing is there to showcase how they matter to me.
But at the same time, there is kind of a shared, like for me and then the friends I have, like, not all my friends share maybe some of the same political views I do or things like that. But in general, we have a lot of the same moral values.
True.
And some of the same religious values. So it's like on those things, like, that's bigger. It's like, I mean, I like the fact that both of you love Lord of the Rings. It's like, that's great. But if one of you hated Lord of the Rings, I'm not going to end the friendship, over that. You know, I might, but.
But then also going to that point, what in regards to even moral convictions, because there's some big moral convictions and smaller moral convictions.
yeah.
Right.
I mean, at what point are you willing to say, well, I'm going to let this slide or I'm not going to let this slide?
Yeah.
I mean, homicidal maniac may
Yeah,
be one of
gen-
those big moral
yeah,
convictions.
Generally,
weren't gonna talk
when
about
you're trying genocide, I don't think I want to be your friend.
Yeah.
So not friends with Hitler.
It's a good note.
Yeah.
Well, Jojo Rabbit. But
That's
no.
a great movie.
Yeah.
But anyways, Sean,
no, I'm not even going to. I'm not going to go where I wanted to go. I'm not going to go. You mentioned genocide, and I thought of another kind of genocide that I'm just.
Oh yeah.
I'm not.
We're not gonna go there.
I'm not friends with people that are into that kind of genocide.
Yeah.
But it is well, okay. So that is a line in the sand that you drew.
Yep.
And there's a moral conviction that you said, okay, this is a hill I'm willing to die on.
Yeah.
And you have to make those within your life to surround yourself with those who you're going to feel more secure with. And ultimately, yeah, the partner in crime, the one you choose to live your life with, your spouse, you would hope shares on the most fundamental level those very core foundational values, that those are the big things.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the littlest stuff, like the holding the door open or the acts of love or
Lord of the
physical
Rings.
touch.
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because even, Sean, you've mentioned how even on the show, Amelia sometimes won't be interested in a certain show or movie you are going to watch.
Oh,
but
she's not interested in anything I like. I mean, really.
what better way to point out, though,
Yeah.
how the big things and the little things
Yeah.
matter.
The big things definitely matter.
Yep. And ultimately, would you say that is the core in which your relationship is built
I'd
on?
actually say the whole opposite is that's one of the things I love the most is the fact that she's not always interested in the same things.
Yeah.
I want my own things, and I want her
Variety.
to have her own things, and it's things that we can agree to disagree or argue about, or I don't want to watch that show, so I'm gonna go in the other room. I don't care. That's one of the things I love about her is that we're not to say that would be boring
Yeah.
to just be with someone that likes everything you like.
That's part of the whole opposite to track.
Yeah.
I mean, would you say, though, that those little things do amount into a big thing?
I mean, yeah,
Eventually?
they can. I also think there's little things that I'm willing to let slide or let go or forgive, and her the same for me because of the bigger things. So
True. That's the sacrifice of
Yeah.
allowing those bigger things to take precedent.
yeah, and I
Or
like
little
your-
things that grow into
I
a
like
big
you've talked to us before about the whole dating thing. And you've said that it's conservative, Christian, and
Wants to have kids.
and wants to have kids.
Those
I
are
was
the
gonna say
three
attractive,
things.
but I
Yeah.
forgot.
I mean,
doesn't
attraction slides in there as,
But I'm
I've
just
gotta
saying,
be attracted
you're not
to
putting
you.
you're not putting it out there like, look, if you snore, I'm out.
Right, no,
you
no,
know, no. That's something that if
Oh.
conservative Christian wants to have kids, if those three things line up, those are big things.
I don't know, the way he just
Then,
said "oh" and
you
looked
know.
at me makes me nervous.
No.
Snoring's not going to be a big. That's going to be a little thing.
Well, I was
that,
going to say
you know.
many of my friends can attest to the fact that over the course of the several years that I've been on the dating scene, most of them not serious at all, those little things did matter. They took precedent. And of course, that stubbornness and pigheadedness is kind of what led me to a current situation of, okay, it's not like I'm dwindling down prospects of I'm just settling for the... No, it's what are the
You're
most
realizing what's
crucial
more
things.
important.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And to me...
As you get older, you
Yeah. You
look for the more important things.
and you have to discern what is the most important hills you are willing to die on. And for me, those three things categorize themselves as the most important things in my life that I want as core values in my spouse. And like you said, Sean, as long as we have those core values as a foundation, I do believe that I will be able to get through whatever problems rear their ugly head
Yeah.
during the relationship.
Yeah, you kind of forgive the little things that don't matter, but you also are compelled because of your affection and love for that person. You're compelled to do the little things that do matter.
Exactly.
So
And to profess and show that
so
bigger
ultimately,
priority.
it sounds like the big things are the ones that are more important.
True. And I think they're the reasons. I know it's funny because
Full circle, right around.
very nice. Very nice.
True.
Yeah, true. That's it. That's beautiful.
bigger
That's a
the
good way to
better.
put it.
Yeah.
Keith, do you have anything else to add?
I don't. I really don't.
Let's see, if he does, we're going to go all the way around again.
But no doubt, absolutely, I would agree. And I think again, there's some people in your life that there's only so far that those values take precedent or matter. And there's some people you're willing to kind of forego a relationship maybe because you don't share certain values, but that doesn't mean that you can't be, an acquaintance, or you can't be, again, I think, and we've talked about this in the relationship segment before, but, it goes back to like how you could have a wide cast net of certain groups of friends, a lot of people who know you and see you as a certain kind of person that, that reflection you give off. But then as your inner circle closes, those people are the ones who undoubtedly are going to be there for you, your closest friends and family that are ultimately going to know who you are and your deepest, darkest secrets, and they're going to be the ones that you turn to when things really go wrong, or when you really need somebody to lean on. It's not going to be that outer group that you're going to depend on. And precisely because in that case, the little things are all you have with that person. But absolutely, I think the little things reflect the bigger priorities that you share with the people that you're closest to. No doubt. Alrighty, guys. But how do you feel out there? What do you think of? Do the little things or the big things matter in the relationship?
Size matters.
Size does matter. And you can let us know how much it matters by emailing us at rmPodcast@redmoonproductions.com. Right there at the bottom of your screen, guys.
Huh.
Huh. Y'all see it?
The right,
Yeah, no, I don't see it.
right here.
Oh, Keith's got it.
Is that
His little fingernail's about to scratch it.
Oh,
Ooh,
RMPodcast at redmoonproductions.com.
just beautiful. I mean, every time he says it, I just
no. I don't even try. After
go
he says
chill
it,
up
there's
my
no
leg.
point.
Ooh. Alrighty, guys, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you all so much for joining us. And as always, like, share, subscribe. Right there at the bottom of your screen, all of our social media accounts, Red Moon Book, Red Moon Tweet, Red Moon Pics, and of course, search for Red Moon Productions on YouTube. Until next time, I am one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host,
Sean Sebastian.
and
I don't have nothing now.
Your
I was,
name?
I was.
you were waiting?
I was inhaling and I was hyping up for it, and then Brandon gave me that look, and I laughed, and now I have nothing.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. For more reviews, previous podcast shows, and everything Red Moon, visit our website, redmoonproductions.com. You can also like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter by searching for Red Moon Productions, LLC. We'll see you at the movies.